Far beyond the familiar stars of human space, in a distant corner of the galaxy, there existed a planet that few beings knew about. Its surface was covered in strange, shimmering forests that glowed under twin suns, and oceans that reflected colors no human eyes had ever seen. The atmosphere was thin but breathable to the native species, who had evolved over thousands of years to survive there. These aliens, a peaceful and highly intelligent race, had built a civilization of elegance and innovation. Their cities floated above the land, powered by energy sources that humans could only dream of, and their technology was delicate yet powerful, perfectly designed to coexist with the fragile beauty of their planet. For centuries, this civilization had lived in harmony, thriving in ways that humans on their harsh death worlds could hardly imagine. Their society valued knowledge, art, and science above all else, and they had little interest in war. Conflict, for them, was a distant memory, stories told in history books of their ancestors' struggles before they had reached this golden age. Yet, in all their wisdom, they had overlooked a danger that would soon test everything they had built. It began quietly at first. Strange shadows moving in the forests, lights flickering unnaturally in the sky, and creatures that defied all explanation. At first, the aliens thought these events were natural phenomena, the kind of unusual occurrences that sometimes happened in the vastness of the universe. But soon the evidence became impossible to ignore. Entire colonies disappeared without warning, leaving behind nothing but scorch marks and broken structures. The predators responsible were unlike anything the aliens had encountered. Fast, strong, and terrifyingly intelligent, they could bypass the most sophisticated defenses with ease. Panic spread among the population. The leaders held emergency meetings, trying desperately to understand the threat, to find some way to stop it. But every plan they devised failed before it could even be implemented. Realizing they were outmatched, the alien leaders made a decision that went against their very nature, that would reach out beyond their star system for help. Sending a distress signal across the vast distances of space was a risky move. It could attract unwanted attention from others who might seek to exploit their vulnerability. Yet, with extinction looming, they had no choice. The signal was carefully encoded with details about their situation, the nature of the threat, and their location. It contained a plea for assistance, not just in terms of battle or weapons, but for allies who had the courage and skill to survive where the aliens could not. Meanwhile, in a completely different part of the galaxy, humans known as Deathworlders were living lives that were the exact opposite of the alien civilization. These humans had been forged by the deadliest planets known to humankind. Their worlds were harsh, unforgiving, and lethal. Toxic storms could kill in seconds. Predators could tear a person apart in a heartbeat, and survival was never guaranteed. From childhood, these humans were trained to endure pain, fear, and danger. They learned to fight, to hunt, and to survive in conditions that would crush ordinary humans. Over generations, they had become stronger, faster, and more cunning. They had no fear of death because they had stared it in the face countless times, and often, they had won. The distress signal sent by the aliens traveled across the galaxy, moving through countless stars and solar systems. It was not an ordinary call for help, it was a sophisticated message, capable of piercing the usual filters and defenses of human communication networks. When it reached the Deathworlders, it was instantly recognized as a call that required attention. Unlike ordinary humans, who might have ignored or misinterpreted it, the Deathworlders could sense the urgency, the desperation, and the challenge embedded in the message. The signal spoke to something deep within them, a combination of curiosity, duty, and the thrill of confronting danger head-on. The Deathworlders convened to examine the signal. Their leaders were seasoned veterans who had faced countless threats, from hostile alien creatures to rogue human factions. They decoded the transmission carefully, analyzing every detail of the alien plea. What they found was astonishing. The aliens' technology was advanced, but their defenses were weak. The predators were unlike anything the humans had fought before, but there were hints in the transmission that could be exploited. The challenge was enormous, but for Deathworlders, the challenge itself was part of the call to action. These humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy. They were survivors, warriors, and problem solvers who thrived where others would fail. As they prepared for the mission, the Deathworlders thought about the risks. No human had ever traveled to this alien system, and the predators described were terrifying even by Deathworlder standards. The terrain would be unknown, the environment unpredictable, and the stakes unimaginably high. Yet, there was also a sense of excitement, a spark of anticipation that came from stepping into the unknown. They were not motivated purely by altruism, though they did recognize the moral importance of helping a civilization in peril. There was also a deep-seated drive to test their abilities, to confront a challenge that would push them to the limits of human endurance and skill. Finally, after days of preparation, the Deathworlders launched their ships toward the alien system. Their vessels were designed for both speed and durability, capable of withstanding the harshest conditions in space. Inside the command decks, the humans were focused, silent, and ready. Each one knew the history of their kind, the survival stories passed down through generations, and the reputation they had earned across the galaxy. They were about to encounter a civilization that had never seen humans before, beings who lived in comfort, safety, and beauty, untouched by the relentless trials of the Deathworld worlds. Yet, the humans were not intimidated by alien sophistication. They had learned that survival depended not on beauty or technology, but on courage, adaptability, and cunning. As they approached the alien planet, the first images came through the ship's sensors. Floating cities gleamed under the light of twin suns. Forests stretched endlessly with strange luminescent trees, and vast oceans shimmered with colors that seemed unreal. It was breathtaking, almost peaceful, but the sensors also detected signs of devastation. Scorched areas, collapsed buildings, and strange, unnatural tracks crisscrossed the terrain. The Deathworlders' hearts did not fill with fear. Instead, they focused on understanding the environment, analyzing the threat, and planning their approach. This was exactly the kind of situation they were built to handle when they finally made contact with the alien leaders. It was clear that the creatures before them had no experience with anything like human death. The aliens' fear was palpable, but so was their relief. Here were beings who could fight, adapt, and survive where the aliens themselves could not. The humans did not offer comfort through words, they offered action. They began assessing the situation immediately, mapping the terrain, observing the predator movements, and preparing for the confrontation that would determine the fate of an entire civilization. The aliens, who had been trapped in despair, now saw hope in the form of these fearsome humans, who thrived in Deathworlds and welcomed danger as a challenge. In this first encounter, the foundation for an extraordinary story was laid. A civilization on the brink of extinction had reached out across light years, and humans forged in the crucible of survival had answered. The aliens' distress had awakened the Deathworlders' instincts, and the stage was set for a confrontation that would test courage, strategy, and endurance in ways that no one could predict. From this point onward, nothing would be the same for the aliens, the humans, or the predator that threatened them. After receiving the aliens' distress signal, the Deathworlders faced a critical decision. Sitting together in their command chamber aboard their heavily armored starship, the leaders studied the details of the transmission. Each of them had survived environments that would have killed most humans, and they had fought creatures and enemies whose very existence seemed impossible. Yet, the message before them presented an entirely new kind of challenge. The alien civilization's predicament was unique, unlike any battle they had fought on their own planets or in human-controlled space. The predators were unknown, the terrain alien, and the technology completely foreign. To respond would mean venturing into the unknown in a high-stakes mission, where failure could mean death not just for them but for an entire civilization. The room was filled with tension. Though no one spoke much at first, the Deathworlders were trained to evaluate threats quickly. But this required more than instinct, it required careful calculation. They analyzed the data of maps of the alien planet, environmental conditions, the nature of the predators, and the structure of the alien cities. They studied every transmission, every detail sent by the aliens. It was clear that the threat was not only lethal but highly intelligent. These were predators capable of planning, adapting, and exploiting weaknesses. Any wrong step could result in immediate disaster, even though they were facing an unprecedented danger. The Deathworlders were not afraid. Fear was a tool they had learned to control, to turn into focus and strategy. Each leader understood the stakes, yet they also felt the thrill that came with tackling an impossible mission. Surviving hostile planets had taught them that danger was not something to avoid, it was something to confront with preparation, skill, and courage. That same mindset now guided their discussion. Could they adapt to an entirely foreign world and protect a civilization they had never met? The answer deep down was yes. After hours of debate, the council reached a consensus. They would accept the mission. The reasoning was simple yet profound. Humans had a reputation not only as survivors but as warriors who thrived under conditions others could not endure. They had faced situations where failure was certain, yet they had survived through discipline, ingenuity, and determination. Helping this alien civilization was not simply an act of altruism, it was an opportunity to test their abilities, to confront a challenge that demanded every skill they had developed over generations. In the minds of the Deathworlders, danger was not a threat, it was a call to prove themselves. With the decision made, preparation began immediately. The crew knew they would be facing challenges that could not be predicted. Their ships were outfitted with advanced armor plating to withstand unknown attacks. Specialized weapons were selected, each designed for both long-range and close combat, adaptable to conditions they could not yet anticipate. Survival gear was packed in abundance: environmental suits, medical supplies, communication devices, and scanning tools capable of analyzing alien biology and technology. Every piece of equipment was tested repeatedly, every system checked to ensure it would function in a world completely unlike their own. Training was intensive and relentless. Even the most experienced Deathworlders drilled in scenarios that simulated alien terrain and predator attacks. They ran through combat exercises, emergency response drills, and coordination strategies, refining their teamwork and reaction times. Each Deathworlder understood that no individual could succeed alone. Survival depended on perfect coordination, trust, and an unbreakable chain of strategy. Even in the most extreme environments on their home planets, failure often meant death. Here, failure could mean the destruction of an entire civilization, which added a weight and responsibility unlike anything they had faced before. The psychological preparation was equally demanding. These humans had endured harsh conditions, but their minds had been forged for resilience. Still, the unknown could challenge even the most hardened survivor. They meditated, focused on clarity, and visualized every step of the mission. Mental readiness was critical. The aliens' technology was advanced but unfamiliar, and the predators could behave unpredictably. Any hesitation or doubt could be fatal. By the time the team completed this preparation, they were ready not only physically but mentally to face what awaited them. As the launch date approached, tension mingled with anticipation. The Deathworlders gathered for one final briefing. They reviewed every map, every predator behavior profile, every piece of intelligence gathered from the alien signal. The room was quiet, except for the hum of equipment. Everyone understood the gravity of the mission. But alongside the gravity was excitement. These humans had been built for the impossible, and the unknown planet presented the ultimate test. This was not merely a mission, it was a proving ground for everything that made them survivors. When the moment to depart finally arrived, the crew boarded their ships with a combination of precision and calm determination. Engines roared to life, cutting through the silence of space. Each member of the team knew the risks. The predators were deadly, the terrain unpredictable, and the aliens vulnerable. But the Deathworlders had faced worse. They had survived storms that could vaporize cities, predators that could tear through armor, and conflicts where the odds were overwhelming. The unknown did not intimidate them. It sharpened their senses. They were entering this alien world, fully aware of the dangers and ready to meet them head-on. As they traveled toward the alien system, the crew reflected on the alien civilization itself. Unlike humans, these beings had never known the kind of hardship that forged a death. Their lives had been largely safe, their cities protected, their minds untested by the extremes of survival. Yet here they were, desperate and reaching out across light years for help. The Deathworlders did not judge. They understood the nature of survival. Some civilizations could flourish in safety, but when danger struck, only those trained for it could respond effectively. That understanding fueled their determination. They would arrive prepared, fearless, and ready to act. During the journey, the Deathworlders ran simulations based on the data received from the alien signal. They studied possible predator movements, mapped potential landing zones, and prepared for environmental hazards. Each scenario was analyzed and planned for with meticulous care. Every decision was informed by experience gained over years of survival in the galaxy's deadliest environments. By the time they reached the alien planet, the crew had anticipated nearly every possibility. Of course, the unpredictability of the unknown, which they knew would always exist. Finally, they neared the alien planet. From orbit, the world looked peaceful from a distance. Twin suns bathed forests, oceans, and cities in a golden light. Yet, as sensors scanned the surface, evidence of chaos became clear. Destroyed settlements, scorch marks, and strange tracks revealed the presence of predators far more dangerous than anything the aliens had described. The Deathworlders were not surprised. They had prepared for this. Their training, their instincts, and their determination kicked in. They were ready to descend, assess the situation, and take immediate action. Contact with the alien leaders was established. The aliens, who had only known fear and despair in recent weeks, were stunned by the arrival of these formidable humans. They had never seen beings so confident, so prepared, and so unwavering in their resolve. Words were unnecessary at first. The humans demonstrated their skills through action, moving with efficiency and precision as they surveyed the environment and began coordinating defenses. The aliens watched, learning that hope was now present, not through magic or advanced technology alone, but through beings who had been shaped by survival itself. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test courage, strategy, and adaptability to the limit. The Deathworlders had accepted the challenge not out of simple duty but because their nature demanded it. They had trained for extremes, thrived under impossible odds, and survived where others would perish. Now, they were bringing those qualities to a world in desperate need, a civilization on the brink of destruction, and a threat that had never encountered humans before. Every step, every decision, and every action in the coming days would determine the fate of an entire species. The Deathworlders were ready. They had studied, trained, and mentally prepared for the mission. Their ships, their weapons, and their skills were all at peak readiness. What awaited them was unknown, unpredictable, and dangerous, but they thrived in precisely such circumstances. The aliens' plea had been answered, and now the humans would bring their lethal combination of courage, strategy, and survival instinct to a world that had never faced anything like them before. The mission had begun, and the first step of an extraordinary story was now in motion. The moment the Deathworlders' ships entered the atmosphere of the alien planet, the true scale of the challenge became immediately apparent. From orbit, the world had seemed almost serene, glowing under the twin suns, its floating cities reflecting the light and patterns that were mesmerizing. But as the humans descended closer, the evidence of chaos, destruction, and fear became undeniable. Forests that should have been peaceful glades were scarred by deep gouges, massive craters disrupted the flowing rivers, and in places where cities once floated in harmony, debris now drifted in the thin air. The aliens' technological marvels had been torn apart, leaving broken structures and scattered energy sources exposed to the elements. It was clear that the predators had not only attacked efficiently but had done so with frightening intelligence. As their ships touched down, the Deathworlders quickly disembarked, moving with the same calculated precision that had kept them alive on countless Deathworlds before. Every step was deliberate. They scanned the immediate surroundings for threats, using sensors that could detect movement, heat signatures, and even unusual energy patterns. The aliens, who had gathered nearby in a mixture of awe and fear, watched as these newcomers assessed the situation. There was no hesitation in the humans' movements. Their eyes were sharp, their bodies ready for instant action. The Deathworlders' presence alone seemed to instill a sense of hope among the aliens, a hope that had been absent since the first predator attacks. The first encounters with the predators were both shocking and terrifying. The creatures appeared suddenly, emerging from the forests with speed and stealth that was almost supernatural. They were larger than any predator the Deathworlders had faced, covered in thick, armored hides that reflected energy attacks, and their claws and teeth could tear through even reinforced human armor with frightening ease. Their intelligence was equally alarming. They did not attack blindly, but coordinated, studied the humans' movements, and adapted rapidly to any tactic used against them. The Deathworlders realized immediately that brute force alone would not be enough. Every action had to be precise, every plan flexible, and every team member aware of the other's position and movement. Despite the danger, the Deathworlders were undaunted. They moved through the alien terrain with the grace and efficiency of beings who had been trained for survival under the harshest conditions. One group laid traps in the forests, using camouflaged nets and energy pulses designed to slow the predators, while another moved toward the damaged cities to protect civilians and gather intelligence on predator patterns. Communication between the teams was seamless, a silent network of gestures, signals, and brief transmissions. They had learned over generations that coordination and discipline were just as vital as strength or weapons. The aliens watching these humans were both amazed and terrified. They had spent decades building a society based on knowledge, creativity, and peace, and they had never prepared for the kind of raw, instinctive violence that the predators represented. Seeing the Deathworlders move with efficiency and fearlessness inspired awe. The humans did not panic, even when the predators struck with lethal speed. Instead, they analyzed the situation, adjusted their tactics, and countered with precision. The aliens realized that these humans were not just warriors, they were survivors in the truest sense, beings who had been tempered by the harshest challenges the universe could offer. Every encounter with the predators tested the Deathworlders' skills. The creatures were relentless, attacking in waves, sometimes retreating only to return in greater numbers. They used the terrain to their advantage, striking from treetops, water bodies, and high cliffs. Each attack required immediate adaptation. The Deathworlders responded with a combination of weaponry, strategy, and instinct. Energy pulses, projectile weapons, and traps slowed or injured the predators, but never completely neutralized them. The humans had to think several moves ahead, predicting the predators' behavior and setting up contingencies in real. Failure to adapt could result in casualties, and even the smallest misstep could prove fatal. The Deathworlders also faced the challenge of protecting the aliens. Unlike humans trained for battle, these beings weren't prepared for combat. Many had tried to hide or flee, but instinct alone was not enough against the predators. The Deathworlders quickly established safe zones within the cities and forests, leading groups of aliens to fortified areas where they could be protected. Simultaneously, they trained some of the aliens in basic defensive tactics, teaching them how to move stealthily, recognize predator patterns, and use energy-based shields. The aliens learned quickly, guided by the humans' patience and efficiency, though the fear in their eyes never fully vanished as the initial skirmishes continued. The Deathworlders began mapping the predators' behavior patterns. They noticed that these creatures were intelligent hunters, not mindless beasts. They had territories, hunting strategies, and ways of communicating silently over distances. This meant that the humans could anticipate some attacks, but not all. Every battle required a combination of patience, observation, and rapid action. The Deathworlders relied heavily on their experience from Deathworld planets, where creatures evolved to extreme levels of lethality. Nothing about this predator was entirely unfamiliar, yet every encounter brought a new element of danger, keeping the humans alert, focused, and adaptable. Despite the intensity of the conflict, the Deathworlders maintained morale and control. They understood that panic or hesitation could be fatal. Leaders moved among the teams, coordinating movements, providing guidance, and adjusting strategies based on live observations. Every team member knew their role and executed it flawlessly, a testament to the training and discipline instilled over generations of surviving extreme conditions. The predators, though fearsome, were met with precision, skill, and relentless determination. The humans' presence alone began to shift the balance. The predators were formidable, but they had never encountered beings who could anticipate, adapt, and respond with such efficiency. During one particularly intense encounter, a group of Deathworlders faced a pack of predators emerging from a dense forest. The creatures moved with terrifying speed, leaping from tree to tree, claws extended, eyes glowing with predatory intelligence. The humans split into two teams. One drew the predator's attention with calculated maneuvers, while the other used energy traps and projectile weapons to neutralize the threat. The battle was brutal and chaotic, but every action was coordinated, every move calculated. By the end, the predators were driven back, injured, and forced to retreat. The humans suffered minor injuries, but their strategy had worked. The aliens observing the battle were stunned, witnessing firsthand the deadly effectiveness of beings shaped by survival under extreme conditions. The Deathworlders also adapted to environmental challenges. The alien planets, forests, and floating cities presented obstacles unfamiliar to humans, from treacherous floating platforms to luminescent plants that released irritating spores. The humans approached each challenge as they would on a Deathworld planet, cautiously, analytically, and decisively. They developed techniques to traverse the terrain efficiently, using grappling tools, climbing equipment, and energy-based stabilization devices. Every adaptation increased their effectiveness in battle and demonstrated to the aliens that the humans could survive anywhere, even in a world designed to be beautiful and peaceful rather than deadly. As days passed, the Deathworlders began to gain control over parts of the planet. The predators were not defeated, but their attacks became less coordinated, less effective. By observing patterns, setting traps, and protecting key areas, the humans started to establish zones of relative safety for the aliens. This slow but steady progress boosted morale, both among the humans and the aliens. The latter, who had spent weeks in fear and despair, began to understand the difference between panic and disciplined action. They saw firsthand how the Deathworlders' calm, methodical approach, combined with raw skill and courage, could counter threats that seemed insurmountable. The Deathworlders also began documenting the predators' behavior for future encounters. They noted strengths, weaknesses, and patterns, understanding that information would be as critical as weapons. By combining observation, intelligence, and decisive action, the humans created a feedback loop. Every encounter with the predators taught them more, and every adjustment improved their effectiveness. This adaptability was one of the key reasons they survived in Deathworlds, and it was proving equally essential on this alien planet. Even amidst the chaos, moments of humanity emerged. The Deathworlders occasionally paused to help injured aliens, communicate reassurances, or retrieve children from dangerous zones. These acts were not merely compassionate, they were strategic. Protecting civilians reduced chaos, improved coordination, and allowed the humans to focus on the predators more effectively. The aliens began to trust the humans, understanding that these were not ordinary visitors but beings capable of both ruthless efficiency and strategic empathy. The bond between the species, though unspoken, began to form in the heat of conflict. The Deathworlders had achieved several critical objectives. They had secured initial zones, protected key populations of aliens, mapped predator patterns, and adapted to the alien terrain. The initial fear and chaos were replaced with cautious hope. The predators remained dangerous, but the balance of power had shifted. The Deathworlders had demonstrated their skill, adaptability, and courage, proving that even the most terrifying threat could be confronted with discipline and strategy. The aliens, once paralyzed by fear, began to see a path to survival, a path guided by beings whose very nature was defined by confronting danger and emerging victorious. At the conclusion of this phase, the stage was set for the next challenge, turning these initial successes into a strategy for complete defense and eventual victory. The Deathworlders, battle-tested and adaptive, were ready to lead the aliens through a series of confrontations that would define the future of the planet. Their arrival had shifted the tide, and now the next phase would determine whether they could truly secure the world and save an entire civilization from extinction. After the initial confrontations with the predators, the Deathworlders realized that surviving individual attacks was not enough. The predators were intelligent and adaptable, and unless they developed a long-term strategy, the alien civilization would remain under constant threat. The humans had proven their skill and courage, but they also knew that brute force alone could not guarantee victory. They needed a plan, a precise, calculated approach that could anticipate the predators' moves and protect the aliens while gradually gaining control over the planet. The first step was reconnaissance. Small teams of Deathworlders were sent into different regions of the planet, carefully observing the predators' hunting patterns, understanding their territories, and analyzing their intelligence. Unlike the aliens, who had never faced such threats, the Deathworlders were trained to read signs that others might miss: broken branches, unusual footprints, the way the predators moved through the terrain. Every detail was crucial. By mapping predator movements and studying their behaviors, that humans could predict attacks before they happened, and set traps that would neutralize threats efficiently at the same time. The Deathworlders began fortifying critical zones, alien cities, which had once floated in serene beauty, were partially destroyed, leaving civilians exposed. The humans adapted the alien technology, reinforcing key structures and creating defensive positions. Energy shields were deployed, barriers were strengthened, and safe routes were mapped for civilians. The aliens watched, fascinated by the way these humans combined technical skill with battlefield strategy. The Deathworlders moved with efficiency and purpose, demonstrating that survival in even the most hostile circumstances required both intelligence and action. Coordination and timing became the foundation of the Deathworlder strategy. Each team had a clear role. Reconnaissance units gathered intelligence, assault units engaged predators, and support teams protected civilians and maintained supply lines. The humans communicated through a combination of signals, devices, and silent gestures, ensuring that every move was synchronized. The predators, though intelligent and dangerous, were gradually being forced into predictable patterns. By studying their behavior and using carefully planned tactics, the humans began to control the battlefield, instead of simply reacting to it. The Deathworlders also leveraged the terrain in their favor. The alien planet's forests, rivers, and floating cities were unfamiliar, but the humans adapted quickly. They used elevated positions to ambush predators, waterways to channel attacks, and dense vegetation to hide movement. Every natural feature became a tool for strategy. By combining their knowledge of survival tactics with observation of the alien environment, the Deathworlders turned the unfamiliar terrain into an advantage. The predators, which had once hunted freely, found themselves maneuvered into traps in exposed positions. Patience was a key element of their approach. Unlike humans on Deathworld planets, who often relied on immediate action, the Deathworlders recognized that a long-term strategy was essential. They avoided reckless attacks and instead focused on observation, preparation, and careful execution. When a predator appeared, the humans did not rush into battle blindly. They studied its behavior, predicted its next move, and struck with precision. This methodical approach gradually reduced predator numbers and minimized casualties among both humans and aliens. Throughout this process, the Deathworlders also trained the aliens. Though the species was initially terrified and unprepared for combat, they were intelligent and capable of learning quickly. That humans taught them how to recognize predator patterns, use basic defensive techniques, and take advantage of the terrain. Even small groups of aliens became capable of contributing to defense operations. Their confidence grew with each successful action, and they began to understand the importance of discipline and strategy. The Deathworlders did not simply fight for them, they empowered them to survive alongside them. As days turned into weeks, the predators began to adapt to the humans' tactics. They tested new strategies, attacking in larger packs or using the environment in novel ways. The Deathworlders, however, were always one step ahead. They anticipated these adjustments and incorporated counter-strategies. For example, when predators began attacking from elevated positions, humans used grappling tools and aerial tactics to neutralize the threat. When predators coordinated attacks in groups, humans deployed traps and energy pulses to break the formations. Every engagement became a chess game, with humans predicting and countering moves in real time. A turning point came during a large-scale attack near one of the alien cities. Hundreds of predators descended simultaneously, moving with frightening speed and intelligence. The Deathworlders had anticipated such an assault and had prepared a multi-layered defense. Energy barriers slowed the predators, ambush teams struck from hidden positions, and the aliens, now trained in basic defense, contributed by leading predators into traps. The battle was intense, chaotic, and brutal, but every element of the human strategy worked in concert. By the end, the predators were defeated in that area, and the city remained secure. This victory was more than tactical, it was symbolic. It demonstrated that a calculated, strategic approach could overcome even the most formidable threats. With each success, the Deathworlders' confidence grew, as did the aliens' trust in them. The bond between species strengthened. The aliens began sharing knowledge about their planet, offering insights into terrain features, natural hazards, and even the predators' weaknesses. The Deathworlders used this information to further refine their strategy, creating an increasingly effective defense network across the planet. The collaboration between humans and aliens became a force multiplier. The humans brought skill, courage, and survival instinct, while the aliens contributed knowledge, technology, and adaptability. Together, they became more than the sum of their parts. The Deathworlders' approach was not purely defensive. They also began planning offensive operations to reduce the predators' numbers systematically. Using intelligence gathered from reconnaissance and previous encounters, they identified predator nests, hunting grounds, and breeding areas. Carefully coordinated strikes targeted these locations, using a combination of traps, energy weapons, and guerrilla tactics. Each successful strike weakened the predator's overall strength, while minimizing risks to both humans and aliens. By taking the initiative, the Deathworlders shifted the balance of power decisively. Over time, the planet began to show signs of recovery. Areas once dominated by predator activity became secure zones, allowing aliens to rebuild homes and restore infrastructure. The Deathworlders continued to patrol and monitor threats, But the intensity of attacks decreased as predator populations were diminished, and their behavior became more predictable. The aliens, inspired by the humans' discipline and courage, started to take more active roles in defense and recovery. They learned that survival depended not only on technology but on adaptability, coordination, and the willingness to confront danger strategically. The humans' success was also a lesson in resilience. Despite facing relentless attacks, the Deathworlders maintained focus, energy, and morale. They had trained for extreme conditions, but this mission tested every skill they possessed. It demanded intelligence, observation, strategy, leadership, and physical endurance. Every day brought new challenges, but they met each one with the same calm determination that had earned them their reputation. By combining methodical planning with adaptability and courage, the Deathworlders demonstrated why they were unmatched in the galaxy when it came to survival under the most extreme circumstances. As the phase of active combat and strategic planning came to an end, the Deathworlders had achieved what seemed impossible. They had neutralized the immediate threat, reduced predator numbers, fortified critical areas, and empowered the aliens to defend themselves. The planet, once on the brink of destruction, now had breathing space, a chance to survive, rebuild, and thrive. The Deathworlders had not only saved lives, they had transformed despair into hope, chaos into strategy, and fear into confidence. That alien civilization could now envision a future free from the constant terror of predators. Thanks to the skill, courage, and relentless planning of humans forged by the galaxy's deadliest worlds, the Deathworlders had done more than fight. They had created a legacy. They had shown that with intelligence, strategy, courage, and discipline, even the most terrifying threat could be confronted and overcome. The aliens, who had once lived in fear, now looked at these humans not only as saviors but as teachers and allies. The stage was set for the final phase, ensuring lasting security, rebuilding the civilization, and cementing the bond between humans and aliens. The story of survival, strategy, and triumph had reached a critical point, proving that, even against unimaginable odds, determination, skill, and collaboration could prevail. With the predators defeated and the alien planet finally stabilizing, the Deathworlders' mission was far from over. Though the immediate danger had been neutralized, the humans knew that survival was not only about winning battles, it was about ensuring long-term security, rebuilding what had been destroyed, and preparing the alien civilization for challenges that could arise in the future. The lessons of countless Deathworlds had taught them that danger often returned unexpectedly, and even a temporary peace could be shattered. If vigilance was relaxed, the first step was helping the aliens rebuild their cities and infrastructure. Many of their floating cities had been damaged or partially destroyed by the Predators' attacks. Structures that had once been elegant and delicate now lay in ruins, and the aliens had little knowledge of how to repair them under the ongoing threat. The Deathworlders applied their experience with difficult environments to the reconstruction efforts. They organized teams to stabilize buildings, clear debris, and restore basic energy systems. Where necessary, they modified alien technology to make it more resilient against potential predator attacks, blending human survival methods with the aliens' advanced designs. During this process, the Deathworlders emphasized teaching and empowerment. The aliens were intelligent and curious, and the humans recognized that their ultimate goal was not simply to protect the species but to ensure that they could survive independently in the future. Humans demonstrated techniques for fortifying buildings, setting traps, and monitoring potential predator activity. They taught the aliens how to observe patterns, anticipate threats, and respond quickly with coordinated action. Slowly, the aliens began to take an active role in their own protection, understanding that survival required courage, intelligence, and constant vigilance. The bond between humans and aliens grew stronger with every passing day. The aliens had lived in fear for weeks, their lives disrupted by relentless attacks, and they had never seen beings who could confront such danger with calm determination. The Deathworlders, however, did not simply fight and leave. They stayed, guiding, advising, and working alongside the aliens. Through shared experiences, moments of danger, and joint problem-solving, a relationship of mutual respect and trust formed. That humans were not only protectors but teachers, showing the aliens that courage, strategy, and discipline were as important as technology in surviving a hostile world. As the aliens grew more confident, the Deathworlders focused on developing long-term security plans. They mapped the entire planet, identifying potential predator nests, high-risk areas, and zones suitable for safe habitation. Energy barriers, sensor networks, and alert systems were deployed strategically, ensuring that even if predators returned, the aliens would have early warning and time to react. Training exercises continued, gradually making the alien population capable of basic defensive operations. The Deathworlders understood that true victory was not measured only by eliminating immediate threats, but by leaving the civilization capable of enduring future challenges. The humans also began to integrate with the aliens on a cultural and social level. Though their mission was focused on survival, they could not ignore the differences between their species. The aliens were peaceful, creative, and accustomed to a life of beauty and order, while the Deathworlders were hardened, pragmatic, and accustomed to danger. Despite these differences, both species found common ground in shared goals and respect for skill and courage. The humans learned about the aliens' history, traditions, and ways of thinking, while the aliens absorbed lessons about discipline, strategy, and the reality of survival in a dangerous universe. This exchange strengthened their partnership, making their collaboration more effective and more meaningful. Throughout this phase, the Deathworlders remained vigilant. Even with the predators largely defeated, they conducted patrols and monitoring operations, understanding that one lapse could allow danger to return. Their experience on Deathworld planets had taught them that threats often appeared unexpectedly, and that constant observation and adaptability were crucial. The aliens, now more capable and confident, joined these operations, learning to apply what they had been taught and contributing actively to the security of their own civilization. Each successful operation reinforced their confidence, proving that they were no longer helpless victims but participants in their own survival. In addition to defense, the humans helped the aliens develop strategies for sustainable living in a dangerous world. They advised on resource management, energy conservation, and environmental monitoring, ensuring that the civilization could thrive without being dependent entirely on human assistance. This approach reflected the Deathworlders' broader philosophy. Survival was not only about fighting enemies, but also about preparing for a future in which the civilization could endure independently. By providing knowledge, tools, and training, the humans created a foundation for long-term stability and growth. The predators, though diminished, remained a potential threat. The Deathworlders devised contingency plans in case of resurgence. They established fortified zones, early warning systems, and mobile response teams, ensuring that any renewed attacks could be met swiftly and effectively. These preparations were not meant to instill fear in the aliens, but to give them confidence. With the humans' guidance, the aliens now understood that danger could be managed through careful planning, vigilance, and coordinated action. The planet that had once been paralyzed by fear now had a framework for resilience and survival. As the final days of their mission approached, the Deathworlders prepared to depart. Their work was not yet complete. The aliens were capable, aware, and prepared. But the humans knew that the final test of their efforts would be the civilization's ability to endure without direct oversight. Before leaving, the Deathworlders conducted one last review of defenses, ensuring that every possible measure had been taken to protect the planet and its inhabitants. They reinforced key points, confirmed the readiness of the trained aliens, and left behind tools, instructions, and strategies that could guide the civilization for years to come. The departure was both solemn and celebratory. The aliens gathered to witness the humans leave, expressing gratitude in ways that transcended words. Though the Deathworlders were not accustomed to recognition, they were shaped by survival rather than praise. They felt a quiet satisfaction. Their mission had been dangerous, uncertain, and challenging, yet it had succeeded. They had saved a civilization, taught lessons in survival and strategy, and left the planet stronger and safer than it had been before. The legacy of their actions would endure long after they had gone. As their ships lifted off the planet and climbed into orbit, the Deathworlders reflected on the journey. The aliens would rebuild, thrive, and continue their civilization, now armed with knowledge, courage, and strategy. The Redditors had been defeated and controlled, and the immediate threat to life had been removed. More importantly, the humans had demonstrated that even the most fragile or inexperienced civilization could survive when guided by skill, strategy, and courage. Their intervention had been decisive, but it had also been empowering, giving the aliens the tools to take responsibility for their own future. The bond between humans and aliens was not merely strategic, it was symbolic of trust, respect, and shared purpose. The aliens had learned that survival required courage, adaptability, and action, while the humans had witnessed the resilience, intelligence, and potential of a species previously untested by danger. Together, they had overcome a threat that neither could have managed alone. This partnership, forged in the crucible of survival, would be remembered by the aliens as a turning point in their history, a story of courage, strategy, and hope that transcended the boundaries of species. As the Deathworlders disappeared into the vastness of space, the aliens returned to their cities and forests, inspired by what they had witnessed. The knowledge, skills, and confidence imparted by the humans allowed them to look forward to a future without fear, one in which they could thrive even in a dangerous universe. The planet, once threatened with destruction, now had the tools to endure, adapt, and grow stronger. The story of the Deathworlders' arrival, struggle, and ultimate victory would be passed down through generations, a legend of courage, strategy, and the power of survival instinct in the face of unimaginable danger. The legacy of the humans' actions extended beyond immediate survival. By demonstrating how preparation, strategy, and adaptability could overcome even the most extreme threats, the Deathworlders had left a blueprint for resilience. The aliens had learned to face danger without panic, to observe and adapt, and to rely on intelligence and courage alongside technology. These lessons would shape the civilization for generations, ensuring that the predators or any other threats could never again bring them to the brink of extinction. Finally, as the Deathworlders continued their journey into the stars, they carried with them the satisfaction of a mission completed, lives saved, and a civilization empowered. Their role as protectors, teachers, and strategists had been fulfilled. They had shown that even the most terrifying threats could be met with skill, courage, and planning. The aliens had been given not only survival but knowledge, strength, and confidence. The story of this mission would endure as a testament to the power of preparation, adaptability, and the human instinct to confront danger with determination and intelligence. In the end, the Deathworlders left behind a transformed world, a civilization that had faced extinction and emerged stronger, equipped to survive in a dangerous universe. The predators were no longer a threat, and the aliens now possessed the knowledge and skills to protect themselves in the future. The humans' presence had shifted the balance, not through domination, but through guidance, strategy, and empowerment. And as the humans disappeared into the vast darkness of space, the aliens looked to the sky with gratitude, hope, and a deep understanding of what it truly meant to survive.